Welcome everyone to episode 17 of the Science and Healthcare Sustainability Podcast. Today we're joined by Ben from Sustainable Steps, and as usual, Alex is going to kick us off.
With the same question that I ask every single time. What does sustainability mean to you?
Yeah, thank you, Luke. Thank you, Alex, for having me on. So, sustainability, I've heard a lot of different definitions throughout my time working in this field. For me, the one that's always stuck with me was from the UN, which talks about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own need. Now, that's not very specific to labs at all, and that can go from carbon and being net zero on that point to looking at water to looking at, fish in the ocean and things like that. So to bring it a bit more back into the lab, I think it's about being resourceful, really, not using more than you need to, not creating waste unnecessarily, and really thinking about what we can do to reduce the impact that we have environmentally.
Brilliant. Yeah, great answer. You've obviously got a lot of experience in academia and in industry as well. From your perspective, what is the scale of the problem in laboratories?
I think in the labs it's huge, and I think it can be broken down into three main areas really, which is the plastic waste. So there was a study done by the University of Exeter, which shows that labs consume approximately 5.5 million tons of plastic waste a year, which is a horrific amount, one which I don't think is even, the mind can't really fathom how much that is. A nice little visual is that that's 67 cruise ships equivalent weight, which is huge, obviously. And actually that is 2% of global plastic consumption as well. So where the science community is far less than 2% of everybody, we do have a lion share of plastic contribution to that. So that's certainly one big part of the problem really with labs with sustainability. Energy is a big one as well. So your lab space will consume approximately 3 to 10 times more energy than an equivalent office space would do, and that's like per square meter size to size comparison. A lot of that is due to ventilation, the equipment that we plug in. So there's a big energy consumption there as well. And one thing I used to highlight to some of the academics that I was working with is I'd get the energy statistics for a building full of labs and go, how many homes equivalent do we think this building uses? And depending on the size of the building, we're talking thousands to tens of thousands of homes really in one academic building of labs. So it's a lot of energy, and I think it helps to scale that we all like to do our bits at home as well, like not filling the kettle as high as we need, higher than we need to, kind of things. But when you realize the scale of it in the lab, you see the amount of impact as well you can have in terms of energy. And then finally, water as well. So a similar statistic, labs will consume 4 times more water than an office space will. A lot of that is due to the experimentation we do. A lot of that is due to the quality of the water we need. So when we purify the water to make it deionized, it usually takes 3 litres of normal tap water to produce 1 litre of deionized water. So you can see how that quickly ramps up as well. So yeah, the scale of the problem is large. I hope that we'll talk a bit more about the solutions as we go on, because I like to keep it on a positive note, but the problem is huge for sure.
And how do you think the UK compares globally in terms of the scale of the problem, but also the appetite for change?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the UK is certainly a hotspot for thinking about sustainability in the labs. I know you've had Leaf as recent guests. So Leaf was founded in the UK, and it's a framework which allows labs to act sustainably, really. So that was founded in the UK, and most UK universities are now working in some sort of accreditation for sustainability in the labs. A lot of that has been driven by the Concord Act as well, which I think is, again, has been covered on previous podcast episodes, but it's the requirement of funders to have a minimum level of sustainability to be able to move forward. So the UK certainly is a hotspot for this space. But one thing since I've been active and working in this space is realizing just how worldwide this movement is as well. So I've made connections that the Dutch are working really, really well in this space. I've made some connections in Germany, over in the US. So the UK is certainly a hotspot for making a difference, but it is a worldwide movement as well, for sure.
Yeah, the US surprised me. I don't know why, but we've had a lot of US guests on, mainly manufacturers, and there's some really innovative products coming out of the US that are kind of helping solve the problem, as you'd expect from such a large country, I suppose. So yeah, it's great to
Yeah, and I think to add to that as well, I've been speaking to a few people, and it comes across very much that the US they're often the ones, and this is outside of labs as well, right? They're often ones to lead with innovation, to lead with taking a chance and seeing what happens. And I think it's really great to see some of the products and services that are coming out from the United States to help this big problem that we discussed.
I sense a sort of change in attitudes as well in the UK of scientists towards sustainability. What do you think's driving that? Is it the change in funding, or is it something deeper than that?
I think that there certainly is a change. You're right there. And I think one thing as well I'd like to see is My Green Lab, who are another framework for sustainability certification, recently posted the uptake of awards that they've had worldwide, and it's on an S-curve where we are really rocketing up at the moment. I think it's partially driven by the Concord Act as well. So I started working with labs at Imperial before the Concord Act actually came in. So again, that Concord Act is a framework to encourage labs to do it so that they can receive funding. But even before that stick came in, let's say, there was so much enthusiasm from so many scientists to act more sustainably. So I was the central contact at the university to help them with any applications with Leaf or with My Green Lab. And I had people come to me because it's what they wanted to do. I think, there's a lot of talk about climate change and sustainability, and that things need to change in order for us to help curb climate change. And maybe there's a bit of, I don't know, like resistance, and seeing that things aren't happening at higher levels, whether it be politically or at big companies, that people are getting a bit frustrated at, and they want to make a difference themselves. And I think they've noticed that the lab is a really great place to have that impact. So yeah, I do think there is a really great positive energy at the moment, and it's really great to see podcasts like this. I don't think if we looked 10 years ago we wouldn't be talking in this sort of format about these sorts of topics. So yeah, it's definitely a moving space for sure.
It's a really important topic. But Ben, tell us a little bit more about what you do and where, sustainability steps, etc.
Yeah. So I am the founder of Sustainable Steps. So our mission is to make labs sustainable, one practical step at a time. So the whole point of this is that sustainability can feel really overwhelming and quite daunting. And what Sustainable Steps is there to do is break down those big goals into bite-sized chunks that any lab can start with and any lab can do. So this can be done in a lot of ways. So I've got a blog series called Greening the Bench, and the whole idea of this is as a how-to guide to do certain activities in the lab, be it reducing energy for your fume cupboards from your ULT freezers, could be about how to reduce plastic with your everyday consumables. It could be on reducing ventilation costs from your heating, ventilation and air conditioning. So we have that bi-weekly blog series that is followed with a big LinkedIn profile presence. I think I found LinkedIn as by far the best platform to spread the message to professional scientists. And I'm doing a lot of talks, so podcasts like these to talk to people and get the message out that sustainability isn't as daunting as it sounds in the lab. I think so. When I've worked in a lab for, I've got a chemistry degree and I went straight into an industry lab, and sustainability wasn't spoken about. It was all about quality and all about safety, and those two things are non-negotiables, absolutely. But I think we're now learning that there is this third layer of sustainability, and really Sustainable Steps is there to help guide people add that third layer in, where it can seem scary at first, but really when you break it down, there are some really great, easy, cost-effective things that you can do to make a real difference.
Yeah, absolutely. How long have you been doing this, Ben? Because you seem to be getting a lot of traction. We've had Leaf recommend you to us. I've seen you talking at seminars. The quality of the posts you put on LinkedIn are really, really high. So is this something you've been working on for a while, or is this relatively new?
Oh, no, thank you, Luke. That's very kind of you to say. So we did a very soft launch back in January. So at this point it was, it might be good if I put a couple of blogs out. That could be, quite fun for me, quite interesting to see. But we've really taken it seriously now, really the last couple of months. So as I said, I've always been in the sustainable world, but I saw this gap in the sustainable labs sector where really I think there's a need to break down some of those goals into smaller bite-sized chunks for people. So we are really, really early on in the mission, and there's a lot that we want to do going forward as well to support labs in any way we can, to make sustainability more simple. But yeah, we're still very early on, and I'm quite excited to see where it's going to go next.
Was there anything in particular that inspired you to start Sustainable Steps? Was there a particular event or something that you saw that you kind of looked at and went, this needs to change?
Yeah, so I've always had this. I've had this feeling, especially at the time at Imperial, that there was so much want and energy to do the right thing in sustainability in the labs. As I said before, I had so many people from medicine, from chemistry, from physics, biology, and from engineering all saying, I want to make a difference, but I just don't know where to start. And, I help direct them to the frameworks and programs that are out there like Leaf and My Green Lab. But I did see that there was an additional space there to really help people with those frameworks as well. So Sustainable Steps is not there to compete against any framework. It's there to help elevate and help people engage with those frameworks. As I said, it's to break down those complex goals, because if you were to tell someone it would be good if you reduced the amount of energy your HVAC is using. Now, the first question I would get asked is, what is HVAC? Which is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning for those who don't know. The second is, well, what do I do to do that? Is there a conversation I have to have? How do I make sure I don't have problems with safety requirements? How do I do this with good quality as well? Is it going to affect my experiments? So that big goal of reducing energy from your HVAC, I saw that there was a need to break that down. And that's just one example. So yeah, it was to help those people who had a desire to make a change, but weren't really sure how or where to start it.
Brilliant. You've obviously got a lot of passion and sort of enthusiasm for it, but has there been any challenges along the way that you've faced so far?
Yeah, there's a couple in particular. I think the first is that researchers and scientists are naturally busy people. I still work in an industry lab myself, and it is always busy. I think scientists like to keep themselves busy, but there's always something to do. So sustainability can feel like an add-on and another thing to consume time. One of the things that I've really found is that it's a really great thing to do just aside from your job. So I've loved it as a way to still engage with the community, engage with the people in my lab, but as a lower pressure thing to do, and it can be made to be quite fun. So one of the things I would always say is try and gain that community and that positive energy around it, not to make sustainability a, oh guys, this is another thing we have to do, but say, hey, look, we could try this. And is there a fun way to measure how much energy we save or how much money we're going to save by doing this? So it is something that will take some time, for sure. There's a lot of actions out there that take no time at all, which are actually really impactful and quite fun. So that is one challenge I see for sure. The other is the perception that sustainability often means cost as well. And I think maybe we can talk this in some detail actually, because I think there's a lot of things with sustainability which are absolutely free to do, and any lab could start doing them tomorrow. So for example, a VAV fume cupboard, so variable air volume fume cupboard, which most labs do have. You have the sashes, which can be either open or closed or somewhere in between. So each one of those fume cupboards consumes approximately 3.5 homes worth of energy, which just one of them by itself. So it's pretty, I mean, we talked earlier about the thousands of homes in one building. You've got a bank full of fume cupboards and you can easily see that build into a small neighborhood, really. So by closing those sashes, what we can do is reduce the amount of energy they consume by 30%. So already you're switching off an entire house off the grid simply by closing a fume hood sash. That comes at no cost to educate your team to that. You might want to buy some stickers or do a little promotional campaign in your lab, but there's no big cost to that, and actually there's only huge energy savings to be made from it. So that's a very good example of where sustainability doesn't cost anything. There are some products, so we talk energy efficiency. I think one good example I have on drying cabinets. So these things that are present in most labs, once you've washed your glassware, you often want a quick way to dry them, and they're very good bits of kit. If you have an old one, they're going to be leaking heat out everywhere. They're going to be very energy inefficient, and consume a lot of energy. So one thing you can do is to replace that with a new energy efficient unit that will consume a lot less energy at the time. Of course, there is an upfront cost to that, but depending on how inefficient your first unit is, you're making up those costs within a year just from the energy that you have saved. So there's a lot there just to say that actually, yeah, sometimes sustainability does cost, but you're getting the payback pretty quickly. And then I would say there's a third category of cost around that as well, which is that a lot of new products that are sustainable are also very innovative and very novel because they're brand new. And sometimes actually it is worth spending a bit more money to support these organizations that have come out with this new exciting technology. But one thing I like to think of is if you can save energy elsewhere, say by reducing the amount of Falcon tubes you use, by reducing generally through your experimentation, or if you're able to rewash them, that money you save there could be put into a new novel piece of sustainability kit. That's how I like to think about it.
Excellent. Yeah, just picking up on something you said there about the closing of the sash and the fume cupboards. Have you kind of hit on the next freezer challenge there? Because it's saving a similar amount of energy. I mean, it's actually less energy in terms of like physical activity energy to do that than it is to change the temperature on the freezer, because there is inherent risk in changing the freezer temperature, pushing it up to -70. There doesn't seem to be any risk whatsoever with what you're proposing there in terms of closing the sash. And something Dr. Marie Parker said on our last episode, which isn't actually out as we record this, is that her team at the University of Leeds really enjoy the freezer program because there's a competitive element to it. Well, this is the same. You know, if you challenge your team to close the sash and save this 30%, and then measure it, and then try and beat it the next year and the next year, I really think there's something in there. You probably one step ahead of me, Ben. You're probably always thinking along these lines.
Slash with the sash. There you go.
Something
Yes.
something like that. But the freezer challenge has been
Let's get it out there.
so popular because it has immediate impact and can be measurable and has all those sort of challenging implications. This seems even easier and even more impactful. So, no, Ben, the next challenge is the sash challenge. Slash the sash.
Slash with the sash. I like it.
I love it. And I do think there is awareness out there, but I do agree that this competitive element would be a fantastic way of doing it because, as you say, it's not only got no risks to doing, it's a very easy thing to do. It's actually better from a safety point of view because you're better containing the things that you're trying to contain in your fume hood. So really, it's a win for safety, for quality, and for sustainability. Yeah. We should definitely have a think about how to make this. I always love the thought that you'd be able to, because at this time we would audit labs to see, you'd go in the middle of the day and you go, there's an unintended fume hood that is this far open. So that's the way you would calculate how often they're open or closed. But I love the idea of an automated way to do this. I don't have the technology today to be able to say, oh yes, look, your sashes are closed 89% of the time, and that's an improvement from the 50% before. But yeah, I think that would be a really cool thing to be able to do.
You must be able to just meter the fume cupboard itself and just see the energy usage over a time of being mindful about closing it compared to a time when you weren't, and hopefully you'd see that 30% reduction.
Absolutely, and especially if you do it on I know different buildings have different metering levels, so some are very much, we've got it for every single thing, some are, we have it for the whole building. But when you're looking at whole building, if you have that cross, you could do building versus building. You could say, my chemistry building has saved X amount just from closing the sash, and I don't know, medicine have saved, X amount as well. So no, there's definitely a way to make
it's cheap and easy to put a clamp on an individual bit of equipment. So maybe they could clamp one in each building and see how the energy reduction is, where people make a conscious effort to close.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
So we've touched on time and cost as probably two of the biggest barriers to trying to be sustainable. Are there any other objections that you've come across? It's just interesting to find out if there's any other reasons why people push back against trying to be more sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, I'd caveat all of this with saying that the vast majority of scientists out there that I meet are so positive and happy to make these changes.
And accuracy of experiments as well is obviously a big thing. Nobody wants to change the science.
Of course. So the main thing I would say is that there is sometimes in labs a culture of, well, we've always done it this way, so why should we change? Or if we do change, is this going to cause a problem somewhere else? And I think the -70 change on ULTs is a perfect example of this, where scientists understand, okay, I see moving from -80 to -70 will save me energy. I like that. I'm worried about my samples now. Again, this idea of we've done it this way, so why should we change it? So for me, the way to overcome that really is twofold. One is to show case studies. I think, we talked about accuracy of science data. Scientists love data. And if you can show them, actually, if you look at, so I know the University of Colorado has a lot of data on what they've done at -70 versus -80, and can show where -70 works absolutely fine. So using those case studies, using that data to demonstrate exactly what is safe to do and to sort of break through some of those barriers. The other one that I quite like to do is to show that there are paper walls, which is a little term I like to use to say, we think there is something stopping us. So one example of this is that a lot of samples that are stored currently at -80 can be under some sort of contracts to say they need to be at -80. So I spoke to a few labs who told me this, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then I was like, okay, let's talk with these people who we've got the contracts with to see, can we move to -70? And after a very quick discussion, they were said, yeah, that's fine. Please update some documentation to say that you've moved from -80 to -70, but we don't have a problem with that. So that's something I like to call a paper wall, because we think it's a hard wall which we can't pass, but actually when you touch it a little bit, you realise you can break straight through it. So there's a fair few of those in science. There's a fair few very solid brick walls as well, which you definitely don't want to try and go through. But it's always worth asking the question. If you think, well, it's the way we've always done it because of this, the first question I like to ask is, well, why do we have to do it that way? And sometimes I get back a very, clear answer of, well, it's a safety point of view, we can't change. But sometimes those walls are, a lot less strong and a lot less required.
I think we'll know that the change has kind of happened and permanent when we hear the terminology change as well, because I've been sort of selling freezers for 17 years, and every inquiry I've had has pretty much been, oh, I need a -80. And you hope one day people say, I mean, at the moment the manufacturers are trying to push them as ULTs, but still people call them -80s. But hopefully that terminology will change from -80s to -70s, and you'll know that it's sort of
absolutely. I know. I'm very on it to make sure I call them ULT freezers, because I can't call them a -80 because I can't tell someone to change what it is. So I say, it's an ultra low temperature. Yeah, absolutely.
So I know your steps are meant to be bite-sized and break them down, but what's the most impactful one you've done so far? Again, I know this is a journey you're going on. There's going to be much more to come, but of the steps you've sort of published so far, which is the most impactful?
The one I've certainly had most engagement with has been on reducing plastic consumable waste. I think for me, this is the one that, I mean, as scientists, we feel the plastic, right? We're the ones using it. And even outside of the science world, when we think of sustainability in an institution or in the global size, we think first of plastic because we see it, we handle it, and then we put it in recycling, we put it in the bin afterwards. So that's certainly been the topic that has gained the most engagement. And due to that high engagement that we got, I worked on a really structured, in-depth newsletter to give a 10-day breakdown of how you can go from having consumables to reducing the amount of consumables you use. Because the whole focus of this time at Sustainable Steps was to not just go straight to recycling of the plastic consumables, but actually that the first step is to reduce the amount you use. And then once you've reduced, you can look at reusing and recycling. So making sure the 3 R's of sustainability are in the correct order. So what I did was to have a 10-day, almost like a sprint of, you start at day 1 as you are today, and by day 10, you've figured out a way to reduce the amount of consumables you use. And within this, it wasn't just 10 steps of what to do. I was also able to create an in-depth way of calculating how much you're using today, how much that's costing you, and also looking how much CO2 that's consuming as well. Because I think there's a lot of easy metrics to get carbon dioxide for energy. For plastic consumables, it's quite a lot harder. So it's certainly an approximation. It's definitely not because different glove manufacturers are going to have different carbon amounts. And I know it's something Caitlin spoke about generally, that with Scope 3, we need to look at how we measure Scope 3 better as well. Because if I spend £1 on a glove versus £1 on a glove, today they're worth the same amount of carbon, when one might be more, might have better raw materials or a more better process or better way of delivering that as well. So it's very much an approximation, but what it can do is show you how much carbon, how much cost you're using today on 5 key areas. It can tell you how to prioritize just 1 or 2 of them. And then from those 2, it takes you step by step of what to consider, where not to reduce in this case, because sometimes from a quality and safety point of view, we cannot do that. And then to really calculate the savings at the end of it as well. So that's certainly been the most impactful change. in terms of knowledge sharing at Sustainable Steps that I'd say I'd have made. As well, I mean, I think helping lab to lab. So some labs at Imperial that I spoke with were saving up to about 20 grand of energy. Sorry, £20,000 worth of money in energy terms alone just from doing a leaf award. And that often converted to about 20 tons of CO2 as well per year. So the savings just from helping individual labs can actually be really good. But my goal and Sustainable Steps goal is to help not just one lab do that, but as many labs as we can reach to make those changes.
Do you think labs can ever be carbon neutral, or is there an element of waste that's just inevitable?
It's a very good question. It's a tough question. I think we probably need to break down carbon neutral into the three different scopes of carbon as well. So scope one, so when we talk about net zero or carbon neutrality, we measure carbon in terms of scope one, scope two, and scope three. So scope one carbon is the direct emissions from any fuel, any petrol that you are burning. So for let's say a university building, that could be the gas burning to heat the buildings up, for example. Scope two is the embedded carbon in the electricity that you purchase. So this is from the grid, depending what sort of energy you are buying. That can be very low or it can be very high. And then scope three is everything else. So this is the embedded carbon in everything we purchase. It's the embedded carbon in the travel that we do. It's essentially everybody else that we interact with, scope one and two. So take a flight, for example. If I'm going on a flight, it's not my scope one and two, it's my scope three, because it's the airline's scope one and two. They're burning the petrol, I'm using their service. So for labs in particular, we talk a lot about energy consumption. Scopes one and two roughly can equate to about 20% of labs, but then scope three is the other 80%. So it is big. Talking about getting to carbon neutral, scope one and two is definitely achievable and is achieved today in a lot of cases. So I actually had the amazing opportunity to do my master's degree at the University of Nottingham Carbon Neutral Lab, which was this amazing wooden building. So the resources they used to make the building were very sustainable. The energy produced to supply the labs can be completely carbon neutral. And that can be from solar panels, it can be from wind turbines, and it can be from green tariffs as well on the energy that you purchase. So scope one and two absolutely is happening today in terms of carbon neutral in labs. Scope three is a bit harder. It's fair to say that there probably isn't a lab out there doing it today. With offsetting today, it's certainly doable. So it will be a case of any lab can reduce as far as they can, and then the last step would be to offset, be it with carbon credits, which will work to capture carbon or consume carbon another way. But I would say I have a lot of faith in the scientific community that even though there is still that big scope three today, that with a lot of innovation that's going on, the way that we do science today is going to change. And I have a lot of faith that it's going to go down with new products, with innovative techniques, with fantastic services I'm seeing out there today. So maybe not achievable today without offsetting, but in the future, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you. Imagine for a second that you've walked into a lab which is the opposite of that lab in Nottingham. So they're doing nothing in terms of sustainable steps. What three things would you sort of on day one implement?
My number one thing, and this is for any lab out there, would be to start a green team. Because I think having that team, that community to think about it, will end up causing so many more positive actions. I started off doing sustainability in the lab very much on myself, and it was quite a challenge. You know, you'd come across some of those barriers that we spoke earlier, and it was quite hard to do by yourself. But the moment that you make it a community and you work with other people, you have one, people to bounce off, to bounce ideas off of, and two, you have that commitment to other people that you are going to work on this. So absolutely, I would say any lab should start a green team as a first step. It may feel a bit silly because making the team in itself doesn't have any impact, but the impacts that will have going on are incredible, really. The second one we've touched on before would be on the reduction of ventilation where it's safe to do so. So that's two main things: the shutting of the VAV fume hood sashes, which we've spoken before, absolute no-brainer for any lab to do. It's the easiest, biggest energy saving you can make that has no negative impact anywhere. So if you have VAV fume sashes, close them when they're not being used. The other one on the reduction of ventilation is on this heating, ventilation and air conditioning setbacks. So at the moment, your lab goes through a lot of air changes per hour. This is for very, very important reasons for safety, so that, you know, the solvents that you might have, these are extracted from the room and filtered out. Super important for safety. But these systems often run 24/7, even when the labs are completely empty and there's nobody there, over the weekends and overnight in particular. So it is the most impactful thing you can do in saving energy, is to set back those HVAC systems overnight and over the weekend. So that doesn't mean that we turn the ventilation off completely. It just means that we turn it down to a also accepted safe level, so it maintains the minimum airflow required, whilst also not being at the high levels needed when the lab is full of people. So working through with your site safety team, working through with your lab leads and your estates engineering teams is the best way to do this, because it is the biggest energy savings any lab will be able to make. And then the third thing I would do is the reducing of consumables. So we've spoken about this a bit already, but we spoke about the big scope 3. Some of this is from equipment, and there's a lot you can do there, but a big chunk of it is from the plastic consumables that we use and that we dispose of as well. So that is absolutely anything we can do to reduce the amount that we use instead of recycle is a really, really big positive. And I would suggest, once you've formed your green team, having a discussion, highlighting, you know, what are your 5 main consumables? Is it gloves, falcon tubes, pipette tips, syringes maybe, understanding where they are all used and seeing, actually, is there a place where we're duplicating efforts and we don't need to run 2 separate? Is there an opportunity where we can rewash a falcon tube? So one fantastic team at Imperial from the Centre of Inflammatory Disease had a process to wash their falcon tubes after use. So they were barely buying any at this point. And they did all the safety and quality checks to make sure that it didn't cause any contamination or things like this. And it's the single best thing you can do for your scope 3 emissions, for sure.
Brilliant, great answer.
Yeah, a lot of these things that we can implement by their very nature save pounds and pennies. You know, turning your freezers to 70, closing the sashes, turning down your HVAC. Is sustainability worth paying a premium for, or should it always be cost neutral?
I think there are some cases where it does need to be a premium that we pay for. So I would say the vast majority of them are either free to do or they gain you money to do them, as you mentioned, Alex. So the energy saving ones are super simple a lot of the time. Some of them, like the drying cabinets that we discussed earlier, there's an upfront payment and the payback you get, and you can easily calculate that payback as well. So if we dive into the drying cabinets again, you can get a little energy meter, to see how much energy your current drying cabinet is consuming. You can then talk with whoever is making the new drying cabinets and say, okay, how much energy does yours consume? Do a quick correlation, and then you've got the amount of energy you save, and therefore you can quickly calculate how quickly you'll pay back the upfront payment. There are certainly some premium products out there for sustainability. They're very novel, they're very new. They, at this point, are a bit more expensive because they are new novel techniques, and the only way they will get cheaper is through mass adoption. So for me, if you have the additional money to help support any premium products for sustainability, it's a really great investment to do, because not only are you getting the sustainability saving, but you are supporting any organisations which are doing good in this space as well.
Yeah, I think this is where private companies maybe need to lead the way a little bit, because if they do make a saving on energy saving or whatever it may be, they can quite easily, I would have thought, put that budget into spending a little bit more on renewable resources, plant-based materials, those kind of things. It's a bit more difficult, as you would know from your university days, in that space, because often the lab people aren't paying the electricity bill. It comes from a central pot, and if they make that saving, even if they calculate it and can sort of document it, they don't necessarily get that in their budget for their consumables. So I think we are maybe talking about more of an industry side here, where those kind of changes in pots of money are a little bit more easy. Or do we perhaps need a change in the way universities operate in terms of their funding? Because maybe they should be rewarding labs who do make an energy saving and giving that money back to them.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point, Luke, because as you say, these energy savings can be big in terms of money, but the labs don't often see that money. Whereas you do with the consumables and with equipment savings, which is where that's even better. I would agree, there may be a better way that we can reward those labs. So if you can demonstrate how much energy you've saved, then there's some sort of reward. The other thing, so when I was at Imperial, I sat within the overarching team. So I wasn't part of any individual lab. It was the central sustainability team. And we were able to fund our own pot of money for people to apply for. So because we knew actually that if we were able to grant people money, say on drying cabinets, say on new ULT freezers that are more energy efficient, then we know that we'll be getting the money back within 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. So it's maybe a balance of the two. But for sure, yeah, that's a very good point, Luke.
Yeah, okay. So we're really excited to hear what's coming next for Sustainable Steps. What plans have you got for the future of the organisation?
Yeah, I mean, it's still early days, and I've got a lot of ideas, I must say, and I need to make sure they're all very effective as well. Anything we do is going to be about spreading the mission that we have to make labs more sustainable, one practical step at a time, as effective as possible. So this is going eventually to transform into trainings and workshops for labs, for lab leads, for anyone to join to learn a bit more how they can take lab sustainability step by step. Also collaborating as well with suppliers, with brands, to help spotlight where there are sustainability savings to be made. So we're launching a new blog series called Sustainable Lab Solutions, which is focusing on the products and services that help labs become more sustainable. So not just how-tos, what you can do in your own lab, but these are things that are available to help you as well. Yeah, it's looking at all kinds of platforms. I think a lot of video techniques are very important for people as well. It's a good way on LinkedIn to interact, but really it's about engaging with people. So getting as many talks as I can, getting out to trainings, workshops, anything I can do to get the message out there.
I think the training's a great idea. We had, as I said, Dr. Marie Parker on in the last episode, and university leads are very fortunate to have people like Marie who've got a lot of experience, who can implement the likes of Leaf and My Green Lab and the Freezer Challenge. If your lab group building doesn't have someone like Marie, then there is that sort of gap in knowledge, I think, in terms of sustainability. What is the easy things to do? What are the quick wins? And then progressing on from that, what are the more challenging changes that you can do that still remain safe? So I think there's definitely a gap for someone like yourself to be able to go into those institutes and give your experience and your knowledge to those people who can then disseminate that information to their colleagues and training for future generations. Yeah.
Where can people find out more about Sustainable Steps? How's best to contact you? How can you help them? Where should people look next?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is on my LinkedIn. So Ben Gray, Sustainable Steps. You can also look at our website, so sustainablesteps.co.uk. That's where you'll find all of our blogs. From there, you'll also be able to subscribe to our newsletter. So we do a monthly newsletter, which is breaking some of the bigger challenges down into even smaller steps. And you can also email me on actionablesustainability@gmail.com. But message me on LinkedIn, message me on Google, any way you want. I'm really looking forward to reaching out and talking to a lot of you guys.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ben. And something I ask everyone, is there anyone else you'd recommend to come on the podcast?
So I think Andy Evans would be a really fantastic guest. So he runs Greenlight Laboratories. So I've interacted with Andy a few times, but very much of my time at Imperial. He goes into labs and does an independent audit of your lab spaces. And this is twofold. It's on behaviour, and it's also on your infrastructure as well. So I spoke about auditing for the fume hood sashes. He can go in, he can independently have a look and see what percentage of people are, what percentage of people aren't. He can look at all of your freezers. He can measure the energy on some of these for you. And he can monitor whether you've got an inventory and whether they're at -80 or -70. And at the end of all of this, he comes out with a big report to say, here are your big energy saving wins, and here's what you should do next. So he's got a lot of data, which I'm sure he would be able to share with you guys. And he's got a really great story and energy and enthusiasm about him as well. So I think he'd make a fantastic guest.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I've known Andy since he was a salesperson for VWR or Vansol now, and he was really the first person I was aware of that was pushing lower energy ULTs based on an energy saving and a payback. So yeah, he's been doing sustainability for years, long before most people sort of took it mainstream. So yeah, we'd love to have Andy on. Right, so that's it. That's all our questions for you, Ben. Thank you so much for coming on.
Been brilliant. Like, subscribe, make sure you stay tuned for episode 18 and many, many more. But thanks, Ben. It's been really interesting to speak to you and listen to what you've got to say, and all the best with it.
Amazing. Thank you both very much. Cheers.
Thanks, Ben.
Science and healthcare.